Growing up an only child in rural Massachusetts, I longed for companionship. A cello to my violin, chocolate to my peanut butter. A friend to take the edge off of loneliness, who would play with me, share adventures, accept me, and stay close. Recently, I was challenged by a project with an old friend. At the end, we debriefed and came to a partial detente that left me unsettled and anxious. I didn't know why exactly or what to do about it. Weeks later, after the dust settled, it occurred to me that the main conflict wasn't between me and my friend, it was between me and myself. In the last weeks of the project, I felt my friend's mounting tension and anxiety. This triggered fear in me and a deep desire for safety. So I prioritized keeping him calm, which backfired in all kinds of ways. Most significantly and surprisingly, that I didn't have my own back. And I didn't bring my whole self into the room. I felt disappointed and saddened by this, and perhaps a bit ashamed. Then came the realization: what if I'm the friend I've always longed for? I'm Rachel Schroeder, and today, Poetry Between Friends launches a special two-part mini-series with four of my former high school students / current mentees. I've known them since 2020, but we've never met in person because I'm in New York City and they're in India, Italy, and Poland. Our format for the miniseries will be a bit different from previous episodes. For each part, two of these extraordinary young women will read each other's poems in English. Then the three of us will chat. At the end, the poets will read their own poems in their mother tongues. Today, Carlotta Campara and Varsha Kini join us from Assisi, Italy, and Gurgaon, India. Carlotta grew up in Gubbio, a small medieval town in Umbria. She concentrates on psychology at University of Studies Guglielmo Marconi and passionately practices theater. She assists in leading an intergenerational community theater project and leads sailing trips for people with physical, mental, and social challenges. Carlotta enjoys dancing, surfing, rock climbing, and nature. She envisions a career that combines scientific inquiry with creativity. Varsha recently completed her studies in psychology. She has sung with choirs and is skilled in guitar, harmonium, ukulele, and piano. Varsha also trained in Bharatanatyam, an Indian classical dance form. She speaks four languages and is currently mastering Korean. I'm thrilled to welcome Carlotta and Varsha to evoke accompaniment. In their poems, authenticity, instructions for use, and a girl of 13. First up, Carlotta reads Varsha's poem. If you'd like to read along, the poems are in the show notes.
A Girl of 13 by Varsha Kini. With a blanket of loneliness pulled over her head, a girl of 13 lies in bed. The silence too loud as she shivers and cries. Pain is the only thing she feels. Under the blanket, it's comfortable not to breathe. The blanket she wants to keep is woven of tunes for the butter thief Amma sang every night. The words tired, but filled with deep love, as if the child were Krishna appeared from above. The blanket cradles dreams of days gone by and hopes of a future oh so bright. They're tinted with nightmares of a green monster, an ugly reminder of her constant fears. She's worried, terrified of losing someone dear. The blanket she will never forget is a patchwork of memories and vignettes. Cartwheels on the grass, the joy of movement, picnics with her family, people once connected. A doctor's playful threat, triggering innocent hatred. The blanket is a true friend. A broken heart it can always mend. When the lullabies are gone and the space closes in, when the awaiting future is not clear, like taking a bullet, it absorbs each tear. The blanket wraps her in a warm hug. It reaches in comfort with every tug. An embrace becoming tighter, it's suffocating. Trapped under the weight and craving a breath, she still latches on, scared to death. The blanket, once a shield, becomes a pair of shackles. She fights and grapples with reality so dangerously close. She's crying, yet the girl of 13 knows the time's come to let go. With the blanket now stored away, after 8 long years, she can finally say, with a heart full of love, a life full of joy, thank you, dear friend, I set you free. It was never the blanket, it was actually me.
Authenticity: Instructions for Use by Carlotta Campara. Wash lettuce and fold clothes as if they were the most extraordinary things to do, because they are. Make decisions with more verve. The perfect choice does not exist. Grant yourself the grace to make mistakes. Supply yourself with fervor and try again. Let go, drop the mask, be dirtier, less tidy, more real. Pamper yourself more, it is never enough. Live life without worrying about what drives it. Find wisdom in acceptance. Confusion is frustrating and fundamental. Touch things, let things touch you. Honor yourself as if you were a human trying your best to be in this world. Because you are.
I just wanted to say, first of all, that reading Varsha's poem was really touching for me because the poem itself, the words, the blanket, it all resonated with me. And I felt like talking to my inner 13 years old girl for real. And I used to have something similar. It was not a blanket, it was like a tree in the garden, my safe place. And it really followed me through the process of going from childhood to adulthood. just growing up. And I remember when I was a child, my mom was not like finding me anywhere. I disappeared. And in the end, like after an hour, I think, she found me because the garden was pretty big. She found me under this tree. And I told her that I was just playing and pretending I was a chick under her mother hen, something like that. And so it really moved me.
That sounds like such a healthier way to cope than trapping yourself under a blanket. But just even listening to the poem in your voice, because the way you read out things, even your poems that I've heard before, it just adds so much more depth to whatever is written. And it was a joy to hear you read out what I wrote.
Oh, thank you so much. I always appreciate so much your compliments. Yeah.
I'm curious, Varsha, can you say more about the depth that you hear? And also, did you hear your poem differently through Carlotta's voice? Or were there things that surprised you about the poem or you hadn't maybe realized were there in hearing her read it?
Well, there weren't so much as new realizations, but I could feel myself living through all of those moments once again, all of the moments that I've mentioned in here. And I could hear in how Carlotta was presenting it, I could hear that, in some places, this is something that Carlotta is also speaking about herself. So a little bit of connection. I could see, 13-year-old Carlotta and 13-year-old Varsha, a tree and a blanket.
Yeah, I love that. And Carlotta, I'm wondering about the experience of hearing Varsha read your poem. Did it change your experience of the poem at all?
I think words have a meaning, but how you read them change it in some way. And I realized that maybe the meaning that I gave to some of the words that I used, that I chose for this poem, could have like different interpretation, maybe also in a good way, like interesting way. Also a bit funny. Like, I don't know if it was because of Varsha, when I write be less tidy, more real. Before that, there's like dirtier, something like that. And for me, like, it was less polished, perfect, and all of that. But I don't know, listening it on someone else's, it felt like dirty in another meaning. I don't know. But it was funny, just that. And the first part of the poem also, I heard Varsha reading the poem in a way that gave to it a meaning that I appreciated more than when I was writing it. Like, listening to her voice gave it something that felt so right and also different from the voice that was in my head while I was writing it.
Let's talk about how we all met, how we know each other.
So I had joined a school called Living Wisdom High School, and I was on campus, but I heard that there was an online class and there were two bright girls named Anush and Carlotta. I heard, oh, one is from Iran, one is from Italy, and I was very curious to know who these girls were. And we had one online class, and it was such a joy to share that class with them. The perspectives that they brought to the class. I would wake up every morning on Monday and Wednesdays at 8 a.m. just to hear them talk.
And we must also say that my English at that time was not so good. So
It was.
no,
I remember
it
your
wasn't.
term papers and the assignments that we did, and they were just so beautiful.
So there you were in Nevada City live, and Carlotta, you were in Gubbio online, and Mahnoush was in Iran online, and Mahnoush will be in our next episode, part 2 of this mini series. And then this was 2019. And then 2020, the pandemic hits, and I came in. I was finishing up my training in education for life teaching method. And the idea popped into my head because I had already produced one podcast for the Ananda community, which is connected to the school. And I proposed to the director of the school, Nitai, oh, what about teaching a course where the students create their own podcast and produce it? So he said, we have 3 senior women, and if you can find a way that they could lead, that would be ideal. And so the 3 of you were then, I cast you in the role of showrunners. And then we created this scripted podcast. You guys wrote the story and you produced it and you put all the other students into different roles on the production team and led it, and you all performed it as well. And then Varsha audio engineered it. I had one more year where I taught Kiara, who will be in our part 2 as well. And after she graduated, we decided to continue with an alumni group, sort of mentorship, menteeship relationship, but I consider you friends. And I love you all. And I'm so grateful, honestly, and moved to stay in connection with you and to watch you all bloom into the women that you're becoming. Gives me hope for the future.
It is a really precious thing what we were doing. It's not like something common, I think. The fact that we are meeting every month and just sharing. I personally consider you like a mentor. Yeah, definitely a friend, like, but also a mentor.
Yeah, the first year with Rachel, while we were graduating, I realized that this relationship that we've built with Rachel and amongst the seniors as well, that was not something that I wanted to let go of anytime soon. And I'm just really glad that all of us were up for this monthly meet thing and were available for it as well, because a lot of times you just get swept up in wherever life takes you and you don't look back. But I'm just really glad we could keep staying in touch, and an opportunity for a podcast like this came up because of Rachel.
I learn as much from you guys as you maybe learn from me. I mean, there are so many instances where I learned things from both of you. And I mean, I even remember the second year with Kiara, we were going to do a short film. And we had some difficulties with camera and whatnot. And Carlotta was involved. And I remember I was a bit panicked. And you helped me through that. You were able to say, what can I do? How can I help you? And I mean, I knew you guys were friends, but in that moment, I realized, wow, Carlotta really is a friend. We don't just see each other as student and teacher. We see each other as human beings. And not just even human beings, but souls. We see the bigger picture of who the other is. And it's such a gift. And Varsha, I remember we had so many conversations. I was mentoring you in how to not just produce and lead a team, but how to deal with other people, how to inspire them, motivate them sometimes. You know, I might say to you, so how would you approach this person? And you right away would know, oh, yeah, this person is more feeling. So maybe I approach them this way. And I was really moved by your intelligence and your care. And again, like seeing them not just as cogs in a wheel to get a podcast done and get an A in your class, but who is this person? How do I get to know? Like the curiosity, your curiosity fascinates me.
I honestly feel very lucky to have had the opportunity to have you as a teacher. Our class was performing arts, and I'm currently doing theater, but every time I think back about that year, I realized that being online has so many limits, but still I don't know, we managed to create something special, first of all, between us. At first, I thought it was not possible. Like, how would you get to know someone and love someone without meeting him, person, her? So, yeah, I Of course, I look forward to meeting you in person at some point soon.
Yes, the feeling is definitely mutual.
And like you mentioned, being online without any way to meet in person has its limits, but I felt like we've done so much with it for ourselves, and now we've found ways to share it with the world as well. So if we put our mind to it, anything is possible.
And on that note, I'm wondering if you guys would like to tell us a bit about the origin stories of these poems.
I find poems as a way to find comfort, to reflect, and just really get my emotions out. So I focused on that while writing this one. Because we've created such a safe space, I felt like I could be vulnerable here and talk about emotions that were raw. So I did write on that, but I was still a bit gated on what I wrote. And I remember Rachel coming up to me several times and being, make it personal, be specific, talk more about what you're feeling. And it was difficult for me because been I am true to myself about my emotions, but it's difficult for me to convey to others. But because of this constant support from Carlotta, Rachel, and every time we met up and shared what we had written so far, I felt I could go deeper with it. And I feel this poem is like a confession letter to myself, and I'm finally allowing myself to be open and honest about my feelings with everyone I connect with. This is a confession letter to me, from me, for my 13-year-old self.
The process for me was, I was about to say tricky, but similar to what Varsha said, it was sort of letter to myself in another form. The title says authenticity instructions for use. So I would say that when I was trying to write something, first of all, I was not satisfied with it. It didn't sound right. And so I asked myself, what do you want to tell yourself right now? Like, what do you need to hear? What is important? And so I started writing thoughts. And in the end, it turned out to be a list of things that really are fundamental for me to be able to say that I am being authentic with myself. I'm letting myself be, just be. And that was the process for me.
Beautiful. We started these probably a year or so ago. So it's been a slow process, but a deep one. I think I led kind of a meditation that then led you into finding feelings and needs. I think, is that right?
Yeah, I remember that guided meditation. And yes, it also makes sense with what I was saying earlier about asking myself those questions. What do you need? And what do you want to tell yourself?
There was one session you did with us where we were encouraged to just accept whatever we were feeling and expressing it with words, whatever came to mind first, and just letting it flow. But in particular, you did a little workshopping with me, Rachel, on this poem. And it was such a healing experience for me where I lived through each verse that I had written. And it can be considered an origin story because before that, whatever I had was very bland, I would say. And it was after that workshopping session with you that there was finally flesh on the skeleton of the poem.
Yeah. Do you feel like sharing a little more about what our process was?
So each one of my verse is actually filled with real memories of my life at that time. And the way we did it was Rachel read out each verse, and I just closed my eyes, felt whatever I was feeling, let those memories come back to me. And I took time to write down in no format whatsoever, just write down whatever I could think of, any feelings, any new realizations, any images that came to mind. I was free to write whatever I want and free to, of course, share it with Rachel or not share it with Rachel. It was where I could censor out things if this was really something I wanted to share with people or not. And that gave me courage to actually share it with people. So a lot of what I wrote during that session is in the poem now.
And I really admire that. I think that's so important, especially today, to learn how to do that.
I believe a lot of the credit for that goes to you, Rachel, because every time we meet, you have a way of empowering us. And every time it's about accepting ourselves. And once I learned that from you, I think that is how I was able to reflect it in whatever I wrote. And I think even with Carlotta as well, whatever we produce with you is a result of that.
Oh my gosh, all these compliments, ladies. I'm blushing. No, but you know what? It also makes me think about it's funny because the theme of this episode, I'm sure not by chance, is accompaniment. And in the poems, you're accompanying your younger selves. In our relationship, all of us, we are accompanying each other. And just as you are accompanying yourselves in your poems, in a way, through my relationship with you, I'm accompanying my younger self, my 20 something self. Yeah, it's kind of a spiral of accompaniment or a symphony of accompaniment. With a girl of 13, I've always been struck by under the blanket, it's comfortable not to breathe.
As you were talking about it, it actually struck me because I had never thought about it deeply. But I do feel like in that moment where I'm just crying my heart out, there comes a time where it's difficult to breathe because you're crying so hard. And in that moment where you're not breathing is when you find stillness. And even in meditation, like that state of breathlessness is when everything becomes calm, time stops, and it's just nothing around you exists anymore. So it can be a sort of comfort, or it can also be a realization of how helpless you actually are. But in this moment, not breathing and just detaching myself, breaking that connect from the world around me was a source of comfort.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'll stick with your poem for a moment. It's unusual that each stanza is a quintain, so it's 5 lines, and your rhyme scheme is mostly A, A, B, C, C, D, D, E, F, F. Sometimes they're near rhymes, so there is some flexibility with that. It reminded me of a sonnet, even though sonnets tend to be 14 lines and there's a turn, a volta. Yours is in the 6th stanza. This is a much longer than 14-line poem, but there is a turn in the relationship to the blanket. It's accompanying you through life. And then it becomes a set of shackles. And there's a real shift there.
As for the rhyme scheme, I have noticed that whenever I write, I tend to stick to making the last words rhyme with each other. And with this project, it was a project to break out of that habit. And 5 lines is unusual for me as well. I tend to stick to 4 lines. And again, another practice to break out of that habit. So, yeah, this was just a very big project of stepping out of my comfort zone. And since it's personal to me, I would be able to feel it better. But if I were to explain it, It starts with the blanket is such a blessing in her life. It's very protective of her, it's always there for her, and it's been with her through every moment. It's carrying all of these memories of what once was. And slowly and steadily, she's realizing that she's holding on to days gone by. And now that she's growing up, she needs to let go of this blanket. And once she realizes that the blanket is holding her back, it's a moment of pain for her because now she has to let go of something that has always been there for her. But now that she's realizing it's toxic, she needs to break out of that. And once she does, she realizes that in those moments, the source of comfort was never supposed to be the blanket, it was herself. And the last line, while I was writing this, I didn't think much of it, but once I read it, the last line, it was never the blanket, it was actually me. It struck something in me. So I went over the poem again, but every time I say the blanket, I replaced it with I. And that flipped the perspective. And that had a very strong impact on me. So, yeah, if you're reading this, if you'd like to change the words the blanket with I, it might bring you a new perspective.
I was reading again the last 3 stanzas when the change happens and the turning point. Just the way it's written really touches something within me when she says, an embrace becoming tighter, it's suffocating, trapped under the weight and craving a breath. She still latches on, scared to death. So this point where you feel like you have to make the step, but there's something holding you back. And because you're scared. I love also the very last line. It was never the blanket, it was actually me. I was also thinking about the connection between Varsha's poem and mine. And the process is different, but in the end, like the last stanza has something in common. I end the poem by saying, just honor yourself because you're a human being. Try to be in this world as best as you can. And in some way, you're doing the same at the end of your poem.
Let's turn our attention to Carlotta's poem. The thing that struck me most, each stanza is its own poem.
It's like Ungaretti, an Italian poet. His poems would be like 2 lines, 3 maximum, something like that. And I didn't notice it, but yes, in some way, every stanza is a poem.
It's a collection of poems. And yes, it's a manual, but I love that this manual is so poetic. And the last stanza really struck me too. Honor yourself as if you were a human, trying your best to be in this world because you are. Did you write that first, or did that come out last, or in the middle, or how did that come to you?
I think the last stanza is the one that changed the most. I think it was there, the meaning, and I started writing this poem first in Italian, so it looked different. And then I tried to translate it, but of course change it because it wouldn't make sense to just translate it. And then I wrote again the Italian version starting from the English one. So it was like 3 poems in the end. And the English helped me to go back to the essential, go to the point, and find the words that help you to do that, which was not as easy in Italian. There are different languages, they have some similarities, but in Italian you have all these different ways of saying the same thing, or long sentences that mean one thing. So for me, the process of just saying a few words was a process also within me to go back to the center I have this tendency to give meaning and importance to many, many different things. And sometimes I just get lost. So making it very simple, very essential, it was like a process of cleaning up my mind and my soul.
Like the lettuce.
Exactly.
As it's a manual, it does sound like a to-do list for the day, but not like a busy to-do list. It's more like a simple, slow life that you want to live these days. And I feel like if we follow these steps, it would bring us a lot of joy. And like Rachel mentioned, each of these by themselves sound like a poem in themselves. And I feel like if the girl of 13 was telling herself all of these, she would have been a lot happier. So it did feel like this poem was talking to the girl of 13, and it was really comforting. And I love how at the end, like you mentioned, you have also ended with focusing on the self rather than the world outside. That's really beautiful, especially the one where you talk about touch things and let things touch you. It spoke to me a lot because I do tend to put up walls around myself, and just like touching grass, how rare it is, be connected with the people, with things, with emotions around you. It's just really beautiful words that we need to tell ourselves a lot more these days.
Yeah. In both of these poems, I get a sense that you are reparenting yourselves. I'm definitely moved by what these poems are doing and what you are doing through them for yourselves and for all of us. So let's talk a little bit more about translation. We haven't talked for you, Varsha, about the experience of translation.
My mother tongue is Konkani. It's from the southern region of India, and not a lot of people know about it or speak it. So I had to rely on what I knew in the language and what my mother knew. And turns out it wasn't a lot. So the initial stage of trying to translate the English into Konkani was challenging. I had a rough sketch of how it would sound like, but nothing that sounded like a poem. So we decided to shift gears and get a translation in Hindi, which was easier because I had a lot of reference material to rely on. There were a lot of Hindi poems that I had studied in school. So I knew what would be a general way it should sound like in Hindi, and that helped me. And there was a lot more room to change the sentences here and there to get a rhyme scheme that I like. With that, I got the Hindi translation, and it's not an exact translation, but it does hold the same weight.
Can you say something about the difference in the poems between the two languages and also the experience you have of reading and writing them in the two different languages and those different parts of your, in a sense, identity?
So, with the Hindi version, it sounds more like something that would come up in a Hindi textbook for students to analyze. Because the language is, it's Shuddh Hindi, purely in Hindi. I have put in a few Konkani words here and there to personalize it a bit more. But apart from that, it feels more deep than I expected it to, because I have been more comfortable writing in English.
I'm curious about why in English you find it easier to express yourself, your feelings. In what way did it feel closer to home in the Hindi and the Konkani?
So I have this thing with languages. Some languages feel more intimate than others. Korean is like the most intimate language I know for myself because not a lot of people around me speak that language. So it's like a little secret language for myself. Hindi is something that a lot of people know here. And the emotions that I talk about in the poem is something that I wasn't able to share with my family that easily. So with Hindi, it was one step closer to becoming more vulnerable.
That's really beautiful. I heard you talking about how Konkani is your mother tongue, but you didn't know it that well. When would you speak any of the Konkani that you know, like in life, everyday life?
It's usually just with family and people from our community. The purest form of Konkani I would speak would be when I'm at my grandparents' place. And it has been a bit difficult for me because I don't live there. I'm not surrounded by people who speak Konkani every day. So even though it hasn't been a language barrier, there has been a barrier in expressing my thoughts fluently. When I'm here in Gurgaon, our daily communication is a mix of Konkani, Hindi, and English. There's a lot of code switching going around, and there's not one language that we speak purely in. So I would say there's no language that I know completely. It's just bits and pieces put together.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And the different degrees of vulnerability that you are comfortable with or not. And here we are back to comfortability and bravery. All right, Carlotta, I'd love to hear about translation in your poem.
For me, as I was saying, at first, writing in Italian felt more intimate. I sometimes write something in English as well, but Italian, being my mother tongue and also the language I speak every day, is the language I would use when I, speak to myself. So, since this poem is kind of a conversation and a list of things that I'm telling myself, it started in Italian. Then I translated everything in English, but not literally. It was more of changing here and there to make it sound right. And there is not a rhyming scheme, but still it needed to feel right, like the disposition of words and everything. But then after this first translation, I changed the Italian version because the English one felt more direct and even authentic in some way. So, yes, this process was fun to change a bit the Italian version. And now the two versions are pretty much the same. Some words change, but basically it's a literal translation, but it happened from the English to the Italian. I wasn't able to do the same thing going from the Italian to the English. So I think for me, English and Italian, I also speak a bit of Spanish and French, but more Spanish. They're more similar, Latin languages. But in English, like my English self is a bit different from my Italian one. And so that gave me a chance to connect with different abilities and qualities of my being, which then translated into the Italian one, made it richer.
Can you say more about how your English self is different from your Italian self and how the English, I think you said that it's for you also easier to be a little more vulnerable in English.
Well, I think my English version, my English self, is more clean because English came into my life later. I started studying English in elementary school, middle school, but still it wasn't something, in my daily life. And I started really speaking in English later in life. So my Italian self probably it has so many things that and some of them are very beautiful and I really appreciate them. But others are just, that's hard to explain. They are more messy, probably. And so the English self is, It's like newer, fresher, and filled with things that I learned and that I started being when I was already like a teenager or an adult. And that makes a difference. It's hard to explain, but it's like I always say that when you learn a new language, you start being a child again. So it's like a totally different version of myself because it's like growing and starting to grow now. And so doesn't have all the conditionings and things that my Italian version has, I would say.
That totally makes sense. You know, when you grow up with a language, like you say, there's all that conditioning and associations and history, and it's like a clean slate. And it's the you now that is learning this language and creating yourself in this new language. And it's so beautiful. So hearing too how the process of writing your poem is also what the poem is about. And that's the case with both of them. These poems are speaking through all of that experience to each other as well. And who knows, maybe in some magical way, changing each other or changing the poets by the existence of them through the conversation. Ladies, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It is such a joy, including you as friends. I really enjoyed kind of facilitating or going on, accompanying you in the writing of these poems and now in the sharing of them. And I am so grateful that I get to continue accompanying you in life. So thank you.
धन्यवाद.
Thank you so much for inviting us. It was a real pleasure and honor to be here. Grazie.
On that note, my friends, shall you read your own poems now in your mother tongues?
Autenticità, istruzioni per l'uso. Lava l'insalata e piega i panni come fossero le cose più straordinarie da fare. Perché lo sono. Prendi le decisioni con più slancio. La scelta perfetta non esiste. Concediti la grazia di poter sbagliare. Rifornisci te stesso con l'entusiasmo di volerci riprovare. Molla la presa. Togli la maschera. Sii più sporca, più storta, più vera. Coccolati di più. Non è mai abbastanza. Trova la saggezza nell'accettazione. Non capire è frustrante e fondamentale. Tocca le cose. Lascia che le cose ti tocchino. Abbi cura di te, come fossi un umano che tenta di stare al mondo come meglio può. Perché lo sei.
एक 13 साल की लड़की तन्हाई की चादर ओढ़े हुए सिर पर एक 13 साल की लड़की लेटी है बिस्तर पर। खामोशी चीखती है उसकी हर सांस भारी, दर्द ही साथी है बस वही सवारी। चादर के अंदर श्वास घेवच्या नकमुंड दिसता। जो चादर वह रखना चाहती है जुड़ी है माखन चोर की जोई से, जो हर रात अम्मा गाती थी थकी आवाज में। लेकिन उसमें भी इतना गहरा प्यार समाया जैसे उसका बच्चा कृष्ण का रूप धराया। यह चादर लिपटी है सपनों से, बीते दिनों के और भविष्य की आशा से। पर डरावने साए भी आते हैं साथ, हरे दानव की एक भयानक झलक, अपनों को खोने की डर की चुभन। यह चादर वह कभी नहीं भूलेगी, उसकी यादों का टुकड़ा टुकड़ा है जो। घास पर उछलना, दौड़ना और कूदना, पिकनिक का आनंद, जुड़ो है रिश्तों की निशानी। मासूम सी नफरत जब डॉक्टर ने दी धमकी। यह चादर सच्चा दोस्त है बना, उसका टूटा दिल फिर से जोड़ देता। जब जोई बंद हो जाती है, सन्नाटा भर जाता है। जब भविष्य अनदेखा सा लगने लग जाता है, गोली की तरह हर आंसू को सोख लेता है ये। यह चादर उसे गले लगाती है, हर खिंचाव के साथ दिलासा दिलाती है। पर यह आलिंगन कसता जाता, घुटन सा लगने लग जाता, बोझ तले फंसी। सास को तरसती रह जाती है वो, लेकिन भय में इसे छोड़ नहीं पाती है वो। ये चादर जो थी कभी ढाल, अब बन गई हैं उसकी बेड़ियां। हकीकत से लड़ने का आ गया है वक्त। वह रोती है, पर 13 साल की लड़की को है पता, अब इसे छोड़ने का समय है आया। चादर से अब अलग हो गई है वो, 8 सालों के बाद अब कह सकती है वो, खुशी से भरी जिंदगी और प्यार भरे दिल के साथ, धन्यवाद मेरे दोस्त, मैं तुम्हें आजाद करती हूँ। चादर तो बस बहाना था, असल में आजादी मैं ही हूँ।
Poetry Between Friends is produced by Rachel Schroeder. Music composed, produced, and performed by Andrew Vevers. Sound engineering by Revision Sound. Cover art by Matthew Warren Lane. This episode was recorded in New York City on unceded Lenape land, in Assisi, Italy, and in Gurgaon, India. It was engineered, edited, and mixed in Lewisville, Texas on Jumanos and Kickapoo land. If you like what you heard, subscribe and share on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and anywhere you listen. Visit us on Facebook and on Instagram at poetry_between_friends. Find the poems, read along, and join the conversation at poetrybetweenfriends.substack.com. And if you feel inspired, leave us a voice memo on our Spotify page. We'd love to hear from you.
So, my poem is actually based on a real blanket that I had as a kid. So, if this podcast blows up, if this episode blows up, maybe I can share a picture of it. It's a really cute blanket.
I love that.
I want to see it too.
Yeah.